Hey everyone, this is Gnorgot. So Dracotail is finally out in Master Duel. If you followed the channel for a while, you know that I have covered the deck since it came out in the TCG, and we've made a lot of content over the time and accumulated a lot of knowledge. So I figured I'm just going to make one video where I put all of that together and give you the perfect starting point to play this deck in Master Duel with all that we have learned in the TCG and the OCG. Now, I will leave timestamps in the description, so if you are not interested in me going over the cards, you can skip right to the combos. And if you already know the combos and just want deck list, you can skip right to the deck list. But if you do that, at least leave a comment. It will help me out a lot. With that being said, let's just hop right into the cards. So, Dracotail is a fusion-based archetype revolving around spellcasters and dragons. You can see we have a couple of monsters here, spells and traps, and we'll just go over all of them. So let's start with Dracotail Lukias, and if this card is normal special summoned, you can add one Dracotail monster from your deck to your hand, except itself. That is your best normal summon in the deck. It is your Stratos, and this card is sent to the field, to the graveyard as material for fusion summon. You can set one Dracotail spell trap from your deck. Now, all Dracotail monsters have this effect. The dragons have an extra effect to go with that, whereas the spellcasters are higher quality cards in general. You will see that once we go over the others. But Lukias just sets a card. Now, Dracotail 5 mana is your in-archetype hand trap. Now, during the main phase, quick effect, you can discard this card, fusion summon one dragon or spellcaster monster, so you are not locked into Dracotail for this. From your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field, so you can just trigger your Dracotail effect during your opponent's turn while making a powerful fusion monster. Very, very good card, and one of the big reasons why this deck is so good going second. And then it also has the effect to set something, no bonus effect for that. Then we have the first dragon, being Dracotail Mululu. This one on the field has an effect similar to Cartesia of Branded. And during the main phase, quick effect, you can fusion summon a Dracotail fusion monster, and you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except fusion monsters. Now, this is also a normal summon. You will still max out both Mululu and Lukias, because Mululu, in worst case, is still a very, very good fusion material. Because if this card is sent to the graveyard as material, you can still set one Dracotail spell trap, but you can also negate the effects of one face-up monster opponent controls. This is non-targeting. Very important and very, very powerful. So even if you have Lukias and Mululu, you can normal summon, for example, Lukias, and then you fuse the Mululu away and you still get your spell trap plus a negate. Also, one thing to note is that if you have Lukias and Mululu and you can only normal summon one of them and you go first, there's a consideration to normal summon Mululu, because if your opponent imperms Lukias, you pass on nothing, whereas if your opponent imperms Mululu, you can just try to fuse again during the opponent's turn. Next up, we have Dracotail Urgula. So this is one of the higher level dragons, and this sets a Dracotail spell trap, and then it destroys one spell trap on the field. Again, non-targeting. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can target one spellcaster Dracotail monster in your graveyard, place this card on the bottom of your deck, and if you do, add that monster to your hand. So this is generally in your combo what you want to send to the graveyard to add back some resources, most of the time 5 mana. And generally for the big dragons, we'll go over the second one in a second. You want to look at the meta and decide which one of those you want to run more. So if you, for example, are in a meta where back row is very common, then you might want to play more of these. For example, if you're playing a lot of Dracotail Mirrors, you want to play more Urgula than you do Dracotail Pan. Now, Pan has the same effect. It can set one Dracotail spell trap if it's used as a fusion material, and you can destroy one monster on the field. Again, non-targeting. And then, if a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by opponent's card effect while this card is in the graveyard, you can place this card on the bottom of your deck, and if you do, special summon one non-fusion Dracotail monster from your graveyard. Very, very powerful effect against destruction-heavy decks, for example, against Mitsurugi. If you park a Pan in your graveyard and a Murakumo your board, you can use Pan to summon Lukias or Mululu back, and that will give you another layer of disruption. And generally also a very good board breaking tool, Dracotail Pan. Then we have Dracotail Rixel. This is another spellcaster. It's one of the cards we got later, and if this card is normal special summoned, you can target one Dracotail monster in your graveyard, special summon it, then return one monster you control to the hand. Now, this is a very value-oriented card. You summon it and you bounce something back. You can summon, for example, 5 mana, bounce 5 mana back, or you can summon Lukias or Mululu back and bounce Frixel itself. So we have some options there. And what's also very relevant for other deck variants is this is a light, this is a spellcaster, and this is level 2. So there's a lot of things you can do with these attributes. So keep that in mind. In pure, generally a one-off. And that's it for the monsters. So for these spells, we have Key to Dracotail. Now, this is your roller for the archetype. It adds 1 Dracotail monster from your deck to your hand, but it also has a bonus effect that if you go second, most of the time, so if your opponent has a monster on the field while you resolve this, you can fusion summon 1 dragon or spellcaster from your extra deck while after resolving the search. So very, very powerful going second tool. If your opponent has a monster on the field, you activate this, you immediately fuse into something. And you can basically grab Pan, Mululu, Urgula, depending on what you want to break of your opponent's board, and fuse with it right away, while also chain blocking and getting other bonus effects. So very, very powerful card. And the other spell, also very powerful, this is Rahu Dracotail. Fusion summon 1 Dracotail monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand, deck, or field. Also for the rest of the turn, you cannot switch summon from extra deck except fusion monsters. Now, this is very similar to Branded Fusion. Now, this says from your deck, but keep in mind that every Dracotail fusion, we'll go over them in a second, says you have to use a monster from the hand. So this is not exactly Branded Fusion, but still very, very close. And this locks you for the rest of the turn. Unlike Branded Fusion, which locks you for the whole turn, you can do link plays and then resolve Rahu, which is very relevant for some combos that I'm going to show you. And then we have the traps. So each of the traps has the following effect, and that is after it resolves, you can place 1 Dracotail card from a graveyard or banishment on the bottom of the deck except itself, and then draw 1 card. Now, Dracotail Horn targets 1 attack position monster on the field, returns it to the hand or extra deck, and then it does the draw effect. And then we have Dracotail Flame, which negates a spell and does the draw effect, and then we have Dracotail Sting, which can banish 1 monster and or 1 spell trap in your opponent's graveyard. So it doesn't have to be both, it can be both, it can be just one of those, but it has to banish something to draw a card. Now, the gameplay loop of this deck is basically having these traps, and then at some point these traps just recycle themselves while you reset them with your Dracotail effects, and then you just get your advantage that way, while your fusions help you break the board. So a good game plan against this is to somehow deny the traps. So for example, you can Ash Blossom or Ghost Spell, which is very popular, all of these traps, because both of them draw a card, both of them shuffle from the grave, and then the opponent doesn't get the shuffle and the resource loop can be broken that way. Now, for the fusion monsters, we have 2 at this point. There is a third one, which is gonna come in, I think it came out in the OCG just now, and so we might get it in the future. But the first one is Dracotail Arthalion. This is 1 Dracotail monster and 1 plus monsters in your hand. And then if there's a fusion summoned, you can target monsters on the field and or graveyards up to the number of monsters used from the hand, return them to the hand. Now, this effect is very, very powerful and very versatile. So what you can do here is you can bounce your opponent's monsters. You can grave hate your opponent. Like if there's a Murakumo in the grave and you want to get it away, you just bounce it back to the hand. If there's an extra deck monster in the grave that you want to get rid of, you do that. You can just grab back your Dracotails you used. You can grab back hand traps that you have used before. You can grab back a Maxi that you used before. So there's a lot of things you can do with this card, and I think where this deck will shine is how to use this card. So good players will use this card to great effect. And then the second effect is something that all the Dracotail cards have, and that is if 2 monsters are sent to the graveyard at the same time, doesn't matter whose graveyard, so if your opponent does that, like Link summons something, puts 2 monsters away, you can activate this effect and special summon this card from the graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. So then we have the next one, and that is Dracotail Willamel. And this is also 1 Dracotail monster and exactly 1 monster in the hand. And this card says when you activate a Dracotail card or effect, you can target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it, and then it also has the revive effect. Now, this card, the first effect works similarly to Thunder Dragon Titan if you ever played with that card. So that means you activate the Dracotail effect, and you have to activate this immediately in the next chain link. So if you activate a Dracotail effect and your opponent chains any card, say it is Max C, then you cannot activate this card to pop. So keep that in mind. But this card is generally very good in applying pressure, and you need another Dracotail fusion to make your combos. So that is all the Dracotail cards, and let's just show you a standard deck list and then go into some combos for the pure one. So here we have a pure deck list, and you'll see I have just put in a lot of Dracotails. I think you can generally mess around with a lot of these ratios. For example, the big dragons. Here I assume, because the deck just came out, there will be a lot of mirrors, so you want to max out on Urgila to profit off of the mirrors. But of course, you can cut this down and, for example, play another Pan if you want that, or if you just want more non-engine, you can play more non-engine. 3/5 mana are pretty much set in every list, same with Lukias, and Mululu also is very commonly played at 3. And then we have the Frixel, which is not always played in a pure list, at least in the OCG, but I would still recommend it for some value plays. And then, of course, you max out on the spells, and you can run 2 to 3 traps. Now, in the TCG, it's been standard to run 3 in the main. In the OCG, we commonly see 2, so decide for yourself. And then the rest of the deck is non-engine. And for the rest, for the last slot, I have Cartesia. Now, this is a tech card for Dracotail that I like a lot. Well, of course, if you want to run a different hand trap, you can play that. We'll go over the Cartesia combos in a second, but generally what makes this card good is it's another fusion enabler, but also during the end phase, if a fusion monster is sent to the graveyard this turn, you can add this card from the graveyard to your hand. So this is just recurring fusion material, which is very, very good for Dracotail Arthalion, just so that you have something to dump, so you can grab back whatever resources you want. And of course, the deck has great synergy with Max C, because you can just bounce Max C back all the time. For the extra deck, we of course have 3 Arthalion, we have 2 Gulamel, which is very common for pure decks, whereas hybrid versions usually just play 1. And then we have a lot of wiggle room for the rest, because the pure deck actually doesn't have that many fusions that you have to make. So we definitely run, in any version, we run the Secretarian Dragon. This card basically is also on the same set. It loses 1 attack for each of the banished cards. This is rarely relevant, but while you control this fusion summoned card, your opponent cannot activate the effects of special summoned dragon or spellcaster monsters they control. Very important effect in the mirror, but it's not a hard floodgate, because both Mululu and Pan can out this very easily. But this is still a very good card in the mirror. For example, if you know that your opponent is going to summon an Arthalion, you just make this before with a 5 mana, for example, and then your opponent has to pivot away from making the Arthalion. And the other effect is you can target 1 dragon and 1 spellcaster in your graveyard, special summon 1, and if you do, place the other on the bottom of the deck. Your whole deck is dragons and spellcasters, so you can generally revive whatever you want. We have Mysterion, the Dragon Crown. This card is kind of the counterpart to Secretarian, also has the banish attack loss, and this says if a monster uses its activated effect to special summon itself, or a monster with the same original type, you can target one of those special summoned monsters, banish that monster, also banish all monsters from the field with the same original type. Now this is a lot to take in, but basically this is a very good card against, for example, Mitsurugi, because all the Mitsurugis use their own effect to special themselves. So if your opponent activates Murakumo in the grave to summon itself back, you can activate the Mysterion to target the Murakumo and to banish all the reptiles on their field, which is very powerful against that deck. Of course, what's important to know with Mysterion is it doesn't have to be on the field immediately. So, for example, if your opponent activates Murakumo effect to summon itself, you can chain the 5 mana to summon the Mysterion then, and then you just target the Murakumo and you can still banish everything. Then we have Philia Regis. This is a Dragon Fusion monster plus 1 level 7 or higher dragon. In pure, there is mostly going to be 2 Arthalion or 1 Arthalion plus 1 Pan. Secretarian Dragon also works, but usually you just don't want to fuse that away. And this card, during the main phase, can target 1 card your opponent controls on their graveyard, banish it, and if you banish the card on the field, you can bounce a dragon on your field. And then it also has a graveyard effect, but that's not too relevant most of the time. But that's just a very good graveyard hate, because the graveyard hate is free. Again, also very good against Mitsurugi. But if you banish something on the field, that's still very good. And then you just bounce a Mululu or an Arthalion that you just want to recycle, for example. And that's kind of it for the fusion monsters here for Pure. So Pure has the luxury of actually playing a link package. So if you run the Cartesia, you can play a Seals package. Now there's a combo with Cartesia, but also with Lukias, where you can go into Heraldic Seals. Heraldic Seals bounce something, and then you can summon Mululu. Or if you're still in Malice Mitsurugi meta, you can also summon the Kawaki Meru Drago, which is this card, and it prevents your opponent and yourself from summoning light or dark monsters. So you can summon that off of the Seals. Also very good against Lunar Light, for example. Cross Sheep is a very good card. One notable interaction with Cross Sheep is that if you link two monsters away to make Cross Sheep, you will trigger like your Dracotail fusions. Then they come back, you can summon them in a Cross Sheep zone, and that will trigger Cross Sheep to summon something back. So just two monsters into Cross Sheep means you have, again, 4 link materials, which is very good. SP is just good utility. You can opt to play Artemis with it so that you can turn your Lukias into a link material so that you can make an SP that banishes. But generally, I have summoned SP with an Arthalion anyway. And then, because we have the luxury, we can also play a Selene Access Code Talker package. Selene having the bonus effect of if you summon back Lukias or a Frixel, you also get a lot of value while also going to the Access Code Talker line. And generally, Dracotail has a bit of an issue OTKing in some spots, and Access Code plus either Gulamel or Arthalion, which just come back from the grave for free, is lethal. And then lastly, we have a Typhon, which is just good in hand trap decks. So again, if you want to play more hand trap heavy, you can do this. But yeah, I like the Cartesia just for consistency. But you can definitely play whatever hand trap you want. Valor is pretty nice because A, it's a spellcaster, but also it's not once per turn, so you can Valor your opponent, make an Arthalion on their turn, and then bounce back your Valor and Valor them again. So let's hop to some standard combos for Dracotail Pure. Now let's just look at the standard line that is Lukias plus any card, any monster in your hand. So let's just ignore the Urgulas here for now and just show you what the standard line is. So you're going to activate the Lukias and you're going to grab your 5 mana. Then you're going to use the 5 mana to fuse with your Lukias and any card in your hand. Let's take a Dead Fuvalos, and that is it, into an Arthalion. That'll trigger the Arthalion, of course, and targeting your 5 mana. That is important here because you generally want 5 mana in your hand, but also you haven't used 5 mana as a fusion material yet, so that's very important here. And one tip here is just you want to have Arthalion as chain link 1, because Arthalion can get hit with Ghost Bell, whereas the Grave effects can only be hit with Skullmeister, which is not really played. So you target the 5 mana and then you use the Lukias to set a fusion spell, in this case the Rahu, and the Arthalion grabs back your 5 mana. So now you can use the Rahu to fuse into the other fusion by using the 5 mana that is in your hand and an Urgula in your deck. And you just put it somewhere. And now you're gonna trigger both of these effects to set yourself your traps. So whatever traps are good in the matchup, generally Flame is very good into most matchups. And then let's just put the Sting here, and we're not gonna destroy anything. And after that you've done that, you are gonna use your Urgula effect in the grave to grab back your 5 mana. And now you have a Dracotail Arthalion, which does nothing, but you have a Gulamel, which threatens a pop whenever you activate the Sting, whenever you activate the trap, here the Flame, whenever you activate the 5 mana, and whenever you activate, whenever you resolve 5 mana, you will have a fusion monster plus any Dracotail monster in your grave. So you have a lot of pressure from the Gulamel, but also a lot of interaction from these. And then you also have hand traps, right? So if these were hand traps, you would have 3 hand traps, and if these were not hand traps, you would also, instead of using the Fuwalas, you would fuse more Dracotail names to get another trap. So that is just the standard 1.5 combo of Dracotail. So if you open Lukias and any Dracotail name, you can go for what's called the seals line. That is something that has been done in Dracotail in the early days, and I'll show you what you do with it. Now, you're going to normal summon the Lukias, of course, and you're going to grab the mana. And what you're going to do is you're going to use the 5 mana and fuse a Dracotail name in your hand with any card in your hand. You're not going to fuse the Lukias here. Instead, you're going to use 2 from your hand so that we keep the Lukias on the field. And then we're going to go for the Arthalion. We just grab back the 5 mana and whatever we need, and we trigger the Dracotail name in the grave to set ourselves the Rahu again. Grab back both of the names, and we are going to go and link this into a spirit and go into the seals. And after we've done that, we can use the Rahu, because the Rahu only locks us for the rest of the turn. So we can go and do the same thing where we send an Urgula from the deck and the 5 mana that we haven't fused yet from our hand. Go into a Gulamel, and then we can trigger both of the grave effects. We don't use the Arthalion here because there's no reason to do so. And we're going to set ourselves a trap and another trap. Let's just pick one of those, whatever is best in the matchup. And then you're going to use the Urgula to grab back your 5 mana. And now you have a Gulamel, you have a Seals, and you have 2 traps and a 5 mana. And the Seals from your deck can then summon a Mululu or Koakimero Dragu if you play that. Now you can also make the Seals line with a Cartesia, so let's just show what you can do with Cartesia plus a name plus any monster. So you're gonna normal summon the Cartesia, you're gonna make an Arthalion by using your name and whatever monster you have, and you summon this. So then you can trigger your Arthalion and target both of the cards that you just used to just get them back, and you use your name to set a Dracotail card. Let's take the Rahu here, and we are not popping a monster here, and we just grab both of them back. And then here, before we activate the Rahu, we are going to go and we're going to link off the Cartesia into a spirit, and that way we turn the spellcast into a dragon. And then we can you link both of these off for a Seals. And then we can just go and Rahu into the Gulamel, and we just use whatever we want. Depending on what we have in the grave, if we have a spellcaster Dracotail monster that we used, we can send the Urgula. If you want to grab a 5 mana, you can send whatever, and then you set the Kitu. In this case, we have the Kitu in hand. Let's just send an Urgula here and any card from our hand. And we are going to make the Gulamel. And then we can use the grave effect of our whatever card we send to set whatever we need. Of course, the Arthalion here, bringing it back doesn't make sense. So again, here you have the choice. Do you want a 5 mana in hand? Then you set the Kitu. Do you want one of your traps? Then you set that trap. Now, I would generally go for a 5 mana, but in this case, let's just set the trap. And that is the Seals combo with just Cartesia. Now, if we move to the end phase, because the Arthalion went to the grave, we get back the Cartesia. And now if we have a 5 mana, we can fuse the Cartesia to grab back whatever you want, while the 5 mana also would trigger the Gulamel, so it puts pressure on your opponent. And we have the Seals into Mululu, which again is another fusion, so we have a lot of layered interruptions here. Now, I mentioned that the Seals line has been done a lot early and later has been dropped, and the TCG that mostly had to do with branded version taking over, but also I think if you're playing a pure version, there's another line you can do where you don't need the 2 extra deck slots for those two, and that is also Lukias plus a name in hand. So what you're going to do here is, again, Lukias, grab 5 mana if you don't already have her, otherwise you just grab another name, of course, and use the 5 mana, go into your Arthalion with 2 cards in your hand, because we want the body here, right? Then we go into the Arthalion, targeting 2 of your cards, whatever you want to grab back. and you're gonna set yourself a Rahu. And then you grab back 2 of your cards. And what you can do here is you can go into a cross sheet. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use the Rahu, and you're going to fuse your 5 mana with a Frixel from your deck. So you're going to summon the Gulamel in the cross sheep zone, and now you're going to have some triggers. You can activate your graveyard effects here, right? You can activate the cross. You can chain block the cross sheep, which is just generally smart into Bell, and you don't need the Arthalion here. So you're gonna resolve the chain. You're gonna set yourself some cards, and you're gonna special summon the Frixel in this case, and we're just gonna set another card here, and then the Frixel here can use its effect to summon a Dracotail monster from the grave. Now, what you can do here is you can use the 5 mana and bounce back the 5 mana. Or if you have a Mululu that has been used for fusion, you can also summon the Mululu and bounce the Frixel. Now, what we have here is we have a cross sheep, we have a Frixel on the field, we have all traps. So basically, like generally standard setup, and we have an Arthalion parked in the grave. So at any point where we use our 5 mana or anything and summon a fusion monster in the cross sheep zone, or if 2 monsters leave the field and we can just summon the Arthalion in the cross sheep zone, we can use the cross sheep to summon back Lukias, and that'll just give you infinite advantage basically. So this line plays a lot more into Ash, because if you get Rahu'd on if you activate Rahu and get Ashed and you only have the cross sheep, then you don't have the 5 mana yet, so keep that in mind. Whereas if you fuse the Lukias away from the start, you will always have the trap already there. So keep that in mind, but generally this is a very good line to get more advantage, especially in metas where Nib is not that prevalent. Alright, so this version has been mostly dominant in the TCG, which is the branded version, where we have 2 branded fusions, same as in Master Duel. Now, why is branded fusion so good? It is another starter for this deck. You can branded fusion, send Albas plus a Frixel, which is a light spellcaster, to make the Albion the Sanctified Dragon. Going second, you can use the branded fusion to send Mululu to make Lubellion, and that will get you a negate, a set fusion spell, and you can also use the Lubellion to make Mirror Jade, for example, or a Chaos Star Source. And that breaks boards. Now, you have 2 of the branded fusion, you have to play 1 Albas. It's a small package, generally, because we don't have the quick spell in Master Duel yet, the Fallen and the Virtuous, but it generally is just 2 quality cards and Albas in your deck. We still have 1 Cartesia, just because if we already have the Frixel, we can send that with the branded fusion to get it into rotation, and it's generally not a bad starter. The rest of the deck looks very similar, so you will see that we have very standard fusions here. We still play the cross sheep, we still do the SP, we have the Albion and the Lubellion for the fusion targets. We have an Albion to send with a Mirror Jade, and then we have the Titanic Lad. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is that with the Lubellion, if your opponent uses Retaliating Sea, you can go Brand Fusion into Lubellion and Lubellion into Chaos Star Source to pop the Retaliating Sea to at least get rid of it. Also, that is an out for Dimensional Fissure, which is a popular card, popular Floodgate. So that is why the Lubellion is very good. And then the Titanic Lad is just a decent card to run into boards because it is unaffected by extra deck monsters and it gains attack. So usually what you do is you can Brand Fusion, you can send a Pan to pop a monster, and that is 7 plus 4. It's 1100, it's 3600 attack, which is big enough. But more importantly, you can Branded Fusion, send a Nibiru and an Albas to make this, and this is 4000 attack, which is just enough to run over a Liger Dancer. Now, there's also a line where you go Branded Fusion, send the Jizukuru, and that way you go to 3900, which is enough to run over 1 Liger Dancer. and then you go Arthalion to add back the Jizukuru from the grave to out the second Liger Dancer. That is a theoretical line that you could do, but most of the time it's more reliable to just hand trap your opponent so that they only make one Liger Dancer, and you can out that one with just a Branded Fusion. So another option for this deck, if you want, is the Seals line, because as it stands, the Branded Fusion gets you into Dracotail, but Dracotail doesn't get you into the branded stuff. Now you could run the Seals line because Seals can also summon Albas, so on your opponent's turn you go Seals, go into Albas, fuse with your opponent's board, make a Mirror Jade, and then you are in your branded engine. That's something you can do, but for this version I opted not to do it. So that is the overview for Dracotail branded. Let's show you the Branded Fusion combo. So let's just show you the one Branded Fusion combo. Now again, ignore the rest of the hand. We just have the Branded Fusion, and we're going to use it to make a Sanctifier by using Frixel and Albas. Now, that will give you a Sanctifier, which is not a bad card. And then you can trigger the Frixel and the Grave to set a Kitu. Then you can activate the Kitu, and you're gonna just do the normal Dracotail line from here. Now the cool thing here is that the normal Dracotail line is 3 summons, so even with the Branded Fusion into a Sanctifier, you will still play under Nib, which is neat. So you're gonna use 5 mana, you're gonna fuse the Lukias plus any card in your hand. Of course, if you have a Dracotail, then use that to get more triggers, but here we're just gonna go into an Arthalion, and we're gonna use the Arthalion to grab back the 5 mana and use the Lukias to set ourselves a Rahu. Grab back the 5 mana, and then we're going to use the Rahu to fusion summon by using our Urgula and a 5 mana into a Gulamel. And then we're just going to use both of these monsters in the grave to set ourselves 2 traps of our choice. We are not going to destroy a spell trap, and just take the horn here. And then we can go activate the Urgula, target the 5 mana so we can fuse in the opponent's turn, and that is it. Now we have the still same Dracotail board with Gulamel and Arthalion, 2 traps and a 5 mana in hand, but we also have the Albion now. So with the Albion we have multiple targets. We can either revive the Albas in our field to fuse with Frixel we give to our opponent to make our Albion the Branded Dragon to go into Mirror Jade, or if the opponent has an extra egg monster, we can just summon the Albas, fuse with that to into Mirror Jade. You can also give your opponent a Fuvalos, and for us we summon a Frixel. Frixel brings back Lukias, bounce the Frixel, Lukias adds any card, and you just gain a lot of advantage that way. So Sanctifier Dragon here can also get you a lot of value, and this is only off of 1 Branded Fusion. So there's actually another line which is kind of a world premiere right now, because both in the TCG and in the OCG, Predaplant Verte Anaconda is banned as to Dracotail's release and also as to this moment. But in Master Duel it is at 1, so that gives us a new line which you can do in the branded version. And it has the same ingredients as the Cross Sheep and the Seals lines, where you just need Lukias plus a name, and in this case we just ignore the Rahu and we already have the 5 mana. So what you're going to do is, just with the other lines, you normal the Lukias and you grab yourself your Dracotail monster. In this case we already have the 5 mana, so let's just grab an Urgula here. And what you're going to do is you're going to use the 5 mana to fuse with 2 of the monsters in your hand. So let's just take this Cartesia and the Urgula that we have, leave the Lukias on the board, and we are gonna summon our Arthalion. And just like always, we're just gonna grab back the 5 mana because that hasn't been a fusion material yet, and we're gonna use our Urgula to set a Rahu if we don't already have one, and then we grab back the 5 mana. Now before we activate the Rahu and lock ourselves, we can actually make Predaplant Verte Anaconda, which does 2 things. First, if your Rahu gets ashed here, we can still activate the Verte Anaconda, go into a Branded Fusion, and summon something from there. Or what you can do is, if the Rahu goes through, you can do the following. You activate the Rahu, and you're gonna send from your deck. We already have the Urgula and Grave, so we're just gonna take whatever and the 5 mana. gonna make the Gulamel to set ourselves 2 traps by using the Dracotail monsters in our grave. No need to bring back the Athalion here because we can't link anymore. So let's just set 2 traps and let's take 2 of those. And here you can actually go activate the Verte Anaconda and use the effect to send a branded fusion from your deck. And then you can either go send an Albaz and the Verte Anaconda itself to make Murajade, or if you want the 3rd trap, what you can do is go Albion, the Sanctified Dragon, and you're going to send Frixel and the Albaz to go into the Sanctified Dragon. Now, this will trigger the Frixel to set you your 3rd trap. Now, your board is going to be all the 3 traps, and of course you're going to go ahead and take back the 5 mana so that you have that for the opponent's turn. So your board is going to be the Sanctified Dragon, which can bring back either the Albaz to fuse with your opponent's board, or the Frixel to bring back a Mululu if you set that up, or just the Lukias to bounce and get more value. And then you have the Gulamel as well. The Predaplant Verte Anaconda is a bit of annoying that it's on the field, but worst case you can bounce it with the Horn just to get a draw. And then you should have 3 monsters in hand. Of course, we have a Rahu here because we set a Rahu, but of course, if you already have the Rahu, you can just get a key to and grab another name that you might need. But this line is actually pretty neat. We have never had that in the TCG, so I'm definitely going to try that out when I'm playing branded Dracotail and see how much I like it over the normal lines, because if you just normal the Lukias and fuse it away, you'll also end on 3 traps, but here you also get a Sanctifier with that. So Sanctifier, pretty powerful card, so might as well try that out. So the last list I wanted to show is the Magistus version. We don't have that in this form yet in the TCG because we do not have Magistus Spenta, but in Master Duel this card is already out and it gives you a lot of options, especially since in Master Duel, Burlord Savage Dragon is still legal. Now, again, we have a lot of the standard ratios. Notice that the Urgula is cut down because I wanted to make space for a Cartesia, just because I wanted to show you a combo with it. But of course, you can cut the Cartesia to play more dragons or more hand traps or whatever you want. But the rest of the deck is pretty standard, and then you play the Magistus package of 3 Spenta, 1 Zoroa, 1 Crowley, and then the extra deck we play the Aiwas, which is important, the Zoroa, which is a negate. We have Artemis, which is your equip, and we have Boral Savage as your payoff. And the last 2 slots can be anything. There's a line where you can make a rank 8 that I wanted to show you, but there's also a line where the Spenta can bridge you into Dracotail with these 2. I wouldn't recommend that one, but I'm still going to show it to you. And there's also more options of just playing more invoked fusions. For example, if you hard draw Crowley and a Pan, you can go into Raijin and at least trigger the Pan to go into more Dracotail cards. But not much more going on here, so let's talk about some combos. So for the Spenta line, you just want a Spenta, and then if you have a Dracotail monster that's a spellcaster, that helps you also go into the Dracotail line, of course. So let's ignore the first half of the hand and just concentrate on the Lukias and the Spenta. So what you can do is you use the Spenta to grab yourself a Zoroa, and then you can use the Zoroa here and equip itself with an Artemis, and then you use the Zoroa, summon back the Spenta that you discarded, and here you're gonna make a Boral Savage Dragon, which is an Omni-Negate, which is very nice at protecting your Dracotail plays here. Especially against the Retaliating Sea, because you haven't activated the spell yet, right? So here you can use the Artemis. Now, if your opponent would imperm this Boral Savage, you can still use the Spenta from Grave to equip it, and you won't have the negate that way, but you can still grab the Crowley that way. So we're grabbing the Crowley, summon the Crowley, and then we use the Crowley to fuse into an Aiwas with the spellcaster in your hand. Now, Aiwas is already a decent fusion. It's a quick effect Snatch Steal, so it's just an extra disrupt on the field, but most importantly it triggers our Dracotail monster here. So we're going to set ourselves a Rahu, and then we're going to activate the Rahu. If you want, you can use the Spenta to equip another card to the Savage Dragon, then make a Doom Dragon, and then you can make a rank 8 with the Aiwas, but the Aiwas is already a disrupt, so I probably wouldn't do that. So here you can make an Arthalion, you haven't done that yet, and from the deck you want to send a 5 mana and then anything from your hand. In this case we have a Molulu in hand, but let's just go here. And this will trigger your Arthalion to grab back your 5 mana. And you can also activate the 5 mana to set a spell trap, and let's just ignore the Molulu for now. Let's just pretend that was a Fuvalos or whatever. So you can set whatever trap you want, and you grab back the 5 mana here, and usually you will have 2 monsters here, otherwise you would have done the combo differently, and that is generally what you can do here. In the opponent's turn, whenever you make an Arthalion, you can then grab back the Crowley, and Crowley doesn't care from where he's been added, so if you add back the Crowley with an Arthalion, he will trigger Special Summon itself, and then you can use the Crowley plus an Arthalion, for example, to make the Zoroa, which is another monster negate. Now, an alternate line you can do if you want to concentrate more on the Dracotail stuff, but still want to play through Retaliating Sea, is if you have Spenta and Lukias, you're going to normal summon the Lukias, and they'll grab you a 5 mana. And what you want to do here is you can just use the 5 mana to fuse the Lukias with any name in your hand. So let's just take this. You can even like send the Spenta, because you can just make use of the grave effect then. So let's just do that here. So I'm going to fuse these away into an Arthalion. And then you can use the Arthalion for the 5 mana, you know that part, and use the Lukias to set you a Rahu. And here you have the standard Dracotail setup, but before you do that, to play around Retaliating Sea, you can go and equip the Arthalion with an Artemis, and then use the Artemis effect to grab yourself a Crowley, and then use the Crowley to summon itself, and use that effect to fuse with the Arthalion on the field to make your Zoroa, which is a monster negate, and then you can use the Zoroa to equip the Artemis again from the grave, just so that we have something to send, because otherwise Zoroa has to send itself. And if this sticks, you can in the opponent's next turn add another Spenta. Now you have actually a monster negate here, so you can activate the Rahu without fear of being ashed or Retaliating Seed, and you can just do your standard fusion of 5 mana plus Urgula into Gulamel. And you are gonna use these 2 effects to set 2 traps. Now, what's nice about this line is that if your Lukias gets Imperm, for example, you can still use the Spenta to grab Crowley, special Crowley, Crowley fuse with the Lukias into Aiwas, and then you can still set a Rahu and play from there through an Imperm. And that is generally a lot safer through hand traps this way. You can also add back the 5 mana, and that is gonna be the alternate line for Spenta plus Lukias. So I mentioned before that I had the Cartesia in there just to show you a line. Now you can see 2 Cartesias in my hand because I upped the count just so that I can show you it. And that is just Cartesia helping you get into your Magistus line. So in this case, you need Cartesia plus either 5 mana or 2 names, just like Cartesia plus any way to get to 5 mana, basically. So you can normal summon the Cartesia, and you can use the effect to summon an Arthalion using these 2 monsters in your hand, and that makes the Arthalion. So now you can use the Arthalion just to grab back your resources, right? And then you're gonna set 2 cards. And those are going to be the Kitu, so that you can get your 5 mana, and a Rahu, which you need to keep on playing. So you grab back these 2, and what you do here is you're going to activate the Kitu, grab the 5 mana, and here you're going to link off the Cartesia into an Artemis. Now you have a Magistus monster on the field, and you can use the 5 mana to fuse an Exodeck monster plus a Magistus monster, and that will get you your Zoroa. So now your Rahu is protected from Ash, but also you can now equip the Artemis from the grave, and that can grab you a Spenta. So here, what you can do is you can use the Spenta, discard it to grab yourself a Crowley, which you don't even have to use here. Depending on your hand, you can do it or not. But if you run the rank 8 package that I showed you before, you can equip any Magistus in your extra deck, and you're gonna use these two to make a Snake Eyes Doom Dragon. And because 2 monsters went to your graveyard, doesn't matter if they're actually monsters at the time of being sent, they're just monsters that happen to enter the grave, you can trigger your Arthalion. So the Arthalion comes back, and you can here now have 2 level 8s that you overlay for Hope Harbinger, which is a spell negate, which covers a lot of ground that Zoroa does not cover, so that's very nice. And lastly, you can activate your Rahu, and of course if you have a Dracotail name in your hand that you haven't used, you're going to do that. But if you don't, what you can do is you can of course send the Urgula, but then also send the Crowley that you got for free, send it to the grave, go into your Gulamel, and then you can use the Urgula to set yourself any trap you want. Maybe you want some Grave Hate to cover your spell trap, spell negate plus the monster negate. So let's do that. And then you can add an Urgula. You can add 5 mana with the Urgula. So, of course, what you can also do is just not do the Hope Harbinger line and just do a more conservative board. But this way we have like 2 negates on the board, 1 trap, the Gulamel, we have the 5 mana in hand, we have the Cartesia, which is going to come back in the end phase, and we have full hand. So hopefully there's some hand traps in here, and that is just a way to make Cartesia useful to bridge into your Magistus engine. So one last combo I wanted to show you is how Spenta actually gets you into Dracotail. So let's just assume we don't draw any Dracotail cards and we just have the Spenta. There's a line that you can do to get into Dracotail, and I'm personally not a big fan of it, and I think the OCG also has dropped it very quickly, but it does exist and I wanted to show you. So you're gonna do the standard Spenta stuff. You're gonna equip, and you're gonna use the Zoroa to bring back the Spenta. And from here you can go into the Zoroa Synchro. And here you're not gonna do anything because we only run 1 Artemis, but we're gonna use the Spenta to equip the Artemis from our grave to the Zoroa, and then you go Artemis effect, grab the Crowley, and the Crowley to summon and use with the Zoroa on the field, because we want to make the invoked Magistus Omega. Now, this is gonna be your summon number 5. So a huge choke point here would be a nib here on this effect that we're going to activate. But let's just talk about what these cards do. So Magistus Omega, if fusion summoned and destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon 1 level 4 spellcaster from your deck. And this card can destroy a Magistus card on the field to summon it. So what you can do here is you can do Zoroa, target the Magistus Omega, special the Zoroa, and that'll trigger the Magistus Omega to special summon a Lukias from the deck, and this way you can go into your Dracotail combo. So from here on out you're just going to do the standard stuff, but you're already way over nib territory, so generally I'm not a big fan, even like disregarding nib. This plays into every hand trap, like Imperm, Valor, Maxi of course, Fuvalos. There's just too much going on, so I think if you just open the Spenta, I would rather not go into Dracotail and just do a Spenta line, which is already good enough, right? But this has been played at some point, so I just wanted to show that it exists. And here you can make a rank 8 Xyz or just a Cross Sheep, but in addition to your normal Dracotail stuff. So the endboard is of course formidable, especially if you run the rank 8, but one of the big strengths of Dracotail is how well it is into hand traps, and this line just makes you very susceptible to said hand traps. So that is the bridge from Magistus into Dracotail, and that will conclude our Magistus part. So where does that leave us? We have some other things that we can talk about that have been tried in Dracotail and I think have been phased out for good reason. The most prominent one, and I think you're going to see that on ladder just because Master Duel players love that stuff, is Shaddolls. So you can run a package of Shadoll Beast. Sometimes you just play 3 Shadoll Beast. But there's also a package that played 2 Shadoll Beast, 2 Hedgehog, and 1 Squamata, I think, because they search each other. And then you have a package of good fusion material, like you get a draw out of it, you get an add out of it, that can also help you make Winda. So 2 Shadolls, right, makes Winda, but or like a Shadoll and Mululu. So that has been tried in the OCG and in the TCG, and in both it has been phased out because, in my opinion, you don't want extra bricks in Dracotail. You just want your whole deck to work. And I think especially with Spenta in Master Duel, we have more, like if you want more sealing, that's where you're going to get it. If you want more sealing, you're going to play the Spenta version, and I think that is just the best for that. Speaking of sealing, there's also a Dragon Maid version, which, don't get me wrong, is super fun. So if you want to play that as a fun version, it is definitely a fun deck. But you generally what you play is 1 Maid, 1 Lore Power, 3 Parlor, and then 1 Fusion Spell. That's the minimum engine that you run. And then you run like 1 Ladies Dragon Maid, 1 Dragon Maid Shoe, and then I think House Dragon Maid you run 2 of. And that'll get you a negate and some grind game, because this card is actually like really, really strong. So, and you have an extra fusion spell, which is never bad to have in Dracotail. So this version generally is more of a fun version. It is very fun, but I don't think it outshines the versions that I showed you before. Another version that has been popular in the TCG has played Dark End Evaporation Dragon and Light End Sublimation Dragon. These are both level 8 monsters that you can special summon from your hand by banishing a level 8 dragon monster from your extra deck. And they both have the effect during the main phase you can fusion summon 1 fusion monster by using material from the field or hand. Notably, the hand effect to summon locks you into dragons, but not the field effect to fuse. So that's worth noting, because there are some Secretarian lines where you summon them and are not dragon locked. Generally, these are just more fusion spells. You summon them, you go into Arthalia, and then you have 2 level 8 dragons that you can do something with, and they are generally also big bodies. Dark Anti-Vibration can also pop a card on the field that is in attack position, but you normally don't use this because you can only use one of the effects and you generally just want to fuse. But you could summon one of these, fuse into Arthalion, and then trigger some effects and then go into Hope Harbinger. The Dragon Lock obviously prevents you from going into Wulamel, but this gives you some extra sealing plus some extra fusion spells. Now, in the TCG, this has been a decent version, but has also been phased out for branded or like also just pure versions once we got the 3rd trap. And I think in Master Duel, because the effects to summon themselves from hand are, I think, activated effects. Yep, the semicolon. So if you show this to your opponent and you banish a dragon from your deck, they can activate Max C, and then you just play into that much, much harder. Whereas Dracotail is not that bad into Max C. So that's why I wouldn't run these here. Again, if you want more sealing, I would refer to the Magistus version. And then another version that has been popular in the TCG and in the OCG was using 3 King of the Swamp and, of course, 1 Polymerization. And for that, this just gives you a monster that can also be a fusion spell, so that's decent. It gives you access to Guardian Chimera, which is a powerful card. And it gives you access to many fusions, but most notably it gives you access to Red Eyes Dragoon, which is a Dark Magician monster, plus a Red Eyes Black Dragon, or 1 Dragon Effect monster. So King of the Swamp plus any Dragon Dracotail, you go into the Dragoon, and then you have a Dragoon on the field, and that is a powerful card. Now, the reason why I'm not a fan of Dragoon and Dracotail is because this has to discard to negate, and Dracotail is a deck that wants its hand advantage. So that, and generally more like better options that you could play, like Branded Fusion or Spenta, is why I don't like King of the Swamp here. And lastly, there is a line which is admittedly very funny, and that uses Sprite Sprint in combination with Dracotail Frixel, which is a level 2. So you go through a line where you either don't normal summon or you make Secretarion, and Secretarion summons Frixel, or you normal summon the Frixel, and then you have Frixel plus any monster, go into Sprite Sprint, and then you make an Artholion, and like Sprite Sprint sends the Max C, and then Artholion can add back the Max C. And now you have a Max C in your hand. So that is a very, very funny line to grab you a Max C, but that would require you to not use the normal summon, or go into Secretarion, not make the Artholion as your first fusion, because you have to do it later, and then have two bodies on the field, one of them which would be a Dracotail monster that you could have fused off for another trap, go into Sprint, have it not be negated, and then go into Artholion, use one of your Artholion bounces for Max C. So it also takes one extra deck spot for the Sprite Sprint. But it is possible, so I just wanted to show that it exists. And that pretty much wraps up the whole Dracotail summary. I hope that this helped you understand the deck better, give you some ideas how to play it, and give you some deck lists to start off with. And I hope you have a lot of success on the ladder. And if you like that content, or if you want to have more in-depth Dracotail analysis, then check out my older videos. For example, I have a whole video on just Frixel, or on just the dragons, on just the Dragon Maids. There's a lot of content there if you want to dive deeper into Dracotail. So with that being said, I'll see you next time.